insane, but it's the best thing out there. And we're live. Sweet. Concave up, concave down. Increasing, decreasing. Your graph could be increasing or it could be decreasing. Remember, that's from left to right. Whether or not something is increasing or decreasing is always looking at it from the left to the right. Same direction we do. Going up, it's increasing. Going down, it's decreasing. Starting point. This particular graph has a starting point. What else did we talk about? Anybody?
X and Y intercepts.
X and Y intercepts. Do all our graphs have X and Y intercepts? No. Some of these don't. Think about a graph that starts up in the first quadrant. Remember, top right of a graph, and it increases. It's not going to have X and Y intercepts. It's going to look something like that. So not all of these graphs will have X and Y intercepts, but you have to say, what do you say if you don't have X and Y intercepts? Anyone? What if you don't have them? Just leave it blank? What? Oh, like you do. Is it one of you? Somebody say something? Guys, what do you say if you don't have X and Y intercepts? Is it okay to just leave it blank?
Maybe just say it there. Yeah.
Exactly. Guys, it's important as we're making this list of things that are going to be part of an investigation, you need to hit every single one of them. And if it doesn't apply, then the answer is this one doesn't apply. This has no X or Y intercept. Or maybe it has no Y intercept, but here's our X intercept. But we need to make sure that we said something about each of the things on the list so that the person reading your work isn't like, oh man, they forgot to do the X and Y intercepts. No. I told you, they're working. So we're good. All right. Yesterday we started to talk about domain and range, did we not? Yeah, and I gave you guys a brief recap of domain and range. So let's quickly talk about domain and range. Just as a reminder, domain, all possible input or X values, and your notes should already say this. And range, all possible output or Y values. So an easy way to think about this is when you look at the graph, if you took your whole graph and you smooshed it onto the x-axis, where on the x-axis would you have points? That's your domain. If you smoosh it onto the x-axis and there's no points over here, then that's not part of your domain. Range, smoosh it onto the y-axis. Everywhere that there's a point after you smoosh your graph onto the y-axis is part of your range. If there's no points, then that's not part of your range. It's only the part where when you smooshed it, there were points. So you're going to smoosh it 2 times. Smoosh this way and smoosh that way. Everybody say smoosh. Smoosh. Everybody say it again, louder. Smoosh. Smoosh. It's a fun word to say. When you're doing domain range, you get to say it twice. You get to smoosh everything this way, and then you get to smoosh everything that way. So there, you can have fun at least twice. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to talk to your partner, Danny. You're going to jump back to those two. Peyton, you're going to turn around and talk to those. I want you to figure out the domain and range of your graph. And I want to hear you say smoosh when you're talking to your partner. Go. Did you write it down?
No, that's the one thing I forgot.
Even though when we started, I said the first thing you need to do is write down your equation.
All the way down to zero.
Phoenix. What if I told you that it's the square root
X is
of x plus 5 minus 3? Now it curves down. The only thing I don't know from your description. Good. There you go. There's your equation. You guys done?
It looks like the opposite. Yeah. Okay, so that negative two? Yes,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is there a starting point?
Maybe next.
Yeah, because the other side, you just stop at it. Yeah, okay. So, or any point. Well, would you do? It's down three.
Guys, in about 30 seconds, I want to have a quick discussion about what we've got. If we need to turn back around or talk to our partners again real quick to finish it up, then we'll do that. So 30 more seconds. If you're not quite done. Oop. My favorite picture name was this. All right, guys. Right now, everybody should have your equation in your calculator with Desmos showing. Okay, if you don't, quickly type in your equation. If you've just been working off one person's Chromebook, quickly type in your equation. Hit the home button so it goes back to the default size, please. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull somebody's name. I'm going to put your Desmos screen up on the overhead. And then I'm going to ask your team. So I'm not necessarily going to pick on you, but I'm going to ask your team to talk to me about either the domain or the range. I want to have the graph up so that we're all talking about the same thing. You guys know that if you're using the Chromebook, we can look at what you're doing in this GoGuardian thing. Let me just very quickly tell you what I will never do. I will never look at it if you're not here in my class. Okay, I'm not going to be creeping you guys when you're at home. But if you're in class and we're working on stuff, the main reason I pull it up is not to check on you, is so that I can have your work shown up on the board. Generally, I won't ask. No, let me rephrase it. Generally, I will always ask if it's okay to put your work up on the screen. In this case, you're typing in an equation and it's in Desmos, and so I don't feel like that's a problem. But if I was having you working on something and it was on the screen, I might say, hey, do you mind if I share that with the class? At which point I would pull it up and put it on the screen, okay? But it will be with a you saying yes. I won't just stick your work up there in front of everybody to look at if you're not comfortable with it, okay? So just so you were aware, that is sort of my own personal code of conduct for how we utilize the fact that we can look at these things. All right. Phoenix, I'm going to pull your graph up. But first, I have to find yours. There it is. How do I make it bigger? Can I make it bigger? Maybe not. Okay, I guess that's as big as it gets. Okay, I guess that's as big as it gets. Oh, wow, it's huge behind me. It's like small on my little screen back here. Okay. Phoenix, Emily, domain or range, what can you tell us?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Okay. Emily and Phoenix, in unison, I need you to say smush. Smush. That wasn't in unison. Together. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to visualize smushing this graph up to the x-axis. Where's it going to be touching the x-axis when you smush it? Where's that going to hit the x-axis? What are those two numbers?
I can't read it.
But you can read it on there. This is your graph.
-6 and -5.
-5? And is it going to go off this way?
No.
Is it going to go off this way?
No.
Smoosh?
Yeah, never mind.
How far is it going to go this way? How far does your graph go?
It's going.
How far?
I don't know. Doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop. There you go. Forever. Is that domain or range if you're smushing to the x-axis? Domain. Emily and Phoenix have a domain of everything greater than or equal to -5. Because when they smush their graph up until it hit the x-axis, the first point that's going to hit is that -5, and then all this is just going to go off there forever. Emily and Phoenix's domain, which is not your domain, but this is how we found it, but it's theirs. Starts at -5. And goes forever. You should have something that looks like this. Oops, D for domain. And either goes off to infinity in that way, or maybe yours starts and goes off to negative infinity this way. So then it'll be flipped around going the other direction. We cool with that? Does that make sense how we got there? Excellent. Thank you. Range. Marcus. 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 I don't know your last name, so I don't know where your graph is. Marcus. All right. Marcus and or Carter. Talk to us about range. All right, you said smoosh. I like it. He put his hands together. He smooshed.
Okay.
When you smoosh, where does that end up? The top is at -1. Okay. Does it go up or down? How far? Forever. So the range for Marcus and Carter has a bottom of -infinity and a top of -1. Notice it's going the other direction because it's going down, whereas Emily and Phoenix's domain was going up. So the big number was to the right. Bigger number still to the right. Remember, -1 bigger than -infinity. But it's going this way because it's going down forever. So you should have something that looks like those for domain and range for your function. And your range may look more like this if yours is going up instead of down like theirs was. And guys, if you're not sure, if you're a little fuzzy on this, it's okay. This is our first shot at it. We're going to do a lot more practice. We'll get better. Okay. Questions? Blake. All right. Thank you, Marcus. So, quick recap. I give you a function and I say, find everything you can about this function. We're going to come up with some more things to add to this list later on, but for right now, is it concave up or concave down? Is it increasing or decreasing? That's a description. My graph is concave down, decreasing. Oh, which means it goes like that. If I tell you, or you tell me whether it's concave up or down, and whether it's increasing or decreasing, I can tell you the shape of the graph. Concave down, decreasing. Looks like that. Has to. Now, I don't know where on the graph it is. I don't know how steep it is, but I know that it looks like that. One way or the other, that's its shape. Okay? Starting point, Good thing to have. X and Y intercepts, domain and range. If we call this description, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of information that we can find out about any equation that I give you and ask you to look into. All right, we good with that? Questions? Guys, the Algebra 2 portion of this class, remember the way I described it to you, I'm splitting it up into half and half. The Algebra 2 portion is going to be looking at lots and lots and lots of just different functions and starting to recognize these different functions. And this comes a little bit useful to you down the road, because if you're in some sort of field where maybe you're looking at data, maybe you're a nurse, and you've got some data about patient reactions to some procedure. You plot that data on a graph, and if you're familiar with all the basic functions, you might look at that and say, oh, look, I would expect my data to have an equation that's a square root. And that can be super helpful if you want to go ahead and start doing some predictions. It's like, well, okay, what's going to happen with other patients that come in and we're doing this? And if I know that the data has this square root curve, then there's a way to match up a particular square root equation to your data. We'll be talking about that sort of later in the year. How do I get an equation out of this? But it can be fairly useful to be able to, we call that modeling, to model your data with an equation and then be able to use that to predict what happens when more patients are coming in. But it starts with being able to look at the shape of your data and say, oh, I think that's this kind of equation. And there's 6 or 7 basic equations. We'll get to most of them because most of them have some interesting applications. And you'll be able to look at it and go, oh yeah, out of those 6 or 7 equations that we studied, that one sure does look like fill in the blank. All right, but today, all we're doing is just mainly learning how to use Desmos and starting to learn some of this vocabulary. All right. Did we talk about Chromebooks yesterday? Google Classroom? Did I have you go to Google Classroom and did I tell you anything about it? Go to Google Classroom and use Chromebook. So let me tell you a quick story. There was a school, and about 1.5 years ago, for various reasons, they just shut down right smack in the middle of the year. And so the school said, you know what, if everybody's going to be at home, we should give them a computing device. And they gave every student a computing device. And then for the next 1.5 years, all the students used the computing device. And about 1.25 years into this process, all of the teachers were sort of like, did anybody ever actually show the students how to use their computers? And the answer, of course, was no. We didn't teach you anything about the computers. We just dropped off a Chromebook at your house and said, hey, look, stuff's on Chromebook, go. So I was discovering all sorts of crazy things, like 2/3 of the way through last spring, and I would ask some question, well, you guys all do this, right? And like 2/3 of the class is all like, I never heard of that. So that was awkward. So what I decided is that this year I'm going to show you some cool and interesting stuff. I want you to click on your Algebra 2 class in Google Classroom. And when you click on your Algebra 2 class, well, I don't actually know what it looks like because I see the teacher version. Here's what it looks like when I click. Wait, where is it? Oh, I don't have it at all. Does yours sort of look like that when you first go into it? There's all your classes. Okay. Algebra 2, period 6. There's what? it looks like when I go into it? Does it sort of look like here?
Yes, it does.
Use your words. Use your words.
Okay. I'm just giving you an answer.
You guys. Oh yeah, Mr. Irving, absolutely. Ah, good thing I get paid so much, huh? Otherwise, why would I do this job? This is what mine looks like when I first go into it. There's all the classes. Is that what yours looks like? Okay. Here's 2 classes that I am enrolled in. They're not really classes, but it's just information for teachers. And then there's all my actual classes. So then when I go over here to Algebra 2, period 6, does it look like this? Cool. Classwork. Click on classwork. I'm going to strongly recommend for my class, I don't care about anybody else. That's how I roll. For my class, the best way to find things is to click that classwork tab. I think the classwork tab is a little harder to find if you're on your phone, but it is there. Because here's how I organize all my assignments. Oh, last week was week 1 and it was September 2 to September 3. And this week is week 2 and it's September 7 to September 10th. I am going to put these in folders, and every assignment from each week is going to be in that week's folder, which means you don't have to root around trying to figure out, oh my gosh, where'd that go? Oh, you mean it was assigned on the 10th? Well, then it's in the folder called to September 10th. These announcements will always be at the top, which means that if you wanted to look at the syllabus, I'm kidding. Why would you want to do that? If you wanted to find my YouTube channel, if you wanted to find my Zoom link in case you wanted to, say you were home for a few days and you had questions, you could email me and say, hey, can we make an appointment on Zoom? Well, all my Zoom appointments are going to be on the link that's inside that. And they're always at the top. I had students tell me last year that every time I needed your Zoom link, I had to scroll all the way to the bottom of the stream trying to find it. I said, well, why don't you click the classwork tab? The what? Oops. That's awkward. So now here's the second thing that I do not have. You have a button up here. You do not have a button called Create, but you do have a thing that says View My Work. Click it. You see it? Because that, in my opinion, is the best thing in Google Classroom. Because it gives you a list of every assignment that I've ever given you. It tells you if it's missing. It tells you if you turned it in, but that means not graded because it'll say turned in. And it tells you if it's been graded because it'll say 5 out of 5 or whatever your grade was. So now you know, oh, I didn't do that one. Or, oh, I turned that in, but Mr. Harmony hasn't graded it yet. Or, oh, hey, look, I got a 5 out of 5 on that assignment. Now, right next to it, if you attach something, it's going to put a little picture of a paperclip right next to the name. A little picture of the paperclip tells you you attach the file. So if I ask you to turn something in on Google Classroom, you can look at that and you go, oh, look, yeah, I turned that in. There it is. Because sometimes I'll see turned in, but I've asked for an attachment. There's no attachment. Well, you just click the turn in button. You didn't actually give me the assignment. I'm not going to ask you to turn in a whole lot of things this year, hopefully, on Google Classroom, but that option is there. Now, here's the other thing. There's a little one called comments. It looks like a little piece of paper with stuff written on it, with lines of text written on it. If you turn something in, or if you ask me a question and I respond, there'll be a little icon there. Tells you that there's comment. So you get all sorts of useful information off that View My Work screen. I love it. I think it's the best screen there is. And if you're ever wondering, oh man, I'm behind on my work, I was out for a week, I had to go to state, whatever. You can jump in there and scroll down and say, oh look, there they all are. Okay, any questions? Okay. go to your Google Drive. You know, you can click on the 3-dot thing right, or the 9-dot thing right up here. Or you can just go to the browser bar and type DR. And if you've ever been to the Google Drive, it will autofill and say, oh, my drive. And you click on that. So go to Google Drive. How many of you have hundreds, if not thousands, of files in your Google Drive because all the stuff from last year and the year before is still in there? A few of you are putting up your hands. Some of you have organized already, or you just weren't here. You just didn't save most of it? Okay. So there's a couple things I want to show you. Thing one, here's what I'm having my algebra kids do, and I had them do it in class, and I'm not going to make you do it, but I want to give you the option. Let me show you my drive. My drive's got all sorts of stuff. Oh, look at that. Oh, just piles of stuff, and I want to get rid of it, but there it is. I haven't got around to doing it yet. I also don't use this very much. A lot of the stuff in here, like Mr. Forbes shares stuff with us like 87 times a day. That might be an exaggeration. It may be 86. So don't tell Mr. Forbes I said 87. And then that all stuff sort of builds up in here. But I'm relatively organized. I got a bunch of folders here. Here's what I'm having my algebra students do. I'm having them create a folder called old stuff. Just move all the old stuff into the folder called old stuff. I'm not saying delete it because there may be stuff in there that they want or need later. But having them move it all into a folder called old stuff. I'm having them create 7 with homeroom. New folders called First Algebra 2, Second CWP, Third whatever. And now they've got 7 folders, including homeroom, and they can just keep stuff organized. So when you've got a paper that's due for Mr. Lawrence, you're not scrolling through 10,000 pieces of documents trying to find, where's that paper? What did I call that paper? Did I call it paper for Mr. Lawrence? Or did I call it something related to the topic? But you'd have it in that folder with stuff for Mr. Lawrence, and much, much easier to find. So just a thought, last year I had some cool, I was watching some students doing stuff like when they finished an assignment, they'd actually rename it, but they'd leave the original name and then they'd type the words turned in at the end of the name. And now they knew they'd turned it in, they didn't have to look at it again. But they still had it there in case, Mr. Lawrence came back and said, hey, I never got your paper. Well, I turned it in. Well, if you turned it again, it's still there, but it's organized instead of buried. If you want to do that, I'll leave you to it, but I thought I would mention it. I think that the algebra kids were at first like, why do we have to do this? But by the time they finished getting organized, they were all like, oh, well, that's actually sort of cool. And now we can find things. One more thing I want to show you, and I don't actually know how to do this, so we're going to figure it out together. Stuff that somebody else shares with you stays there forever until they delete it. So let me scroll down here. I'm going to show you. This is going to be fun. See this? This is all things people shared with me, including students from last year. Now it's loading because there's so many loading. Look, June 11th, 2021, student shared with me. June 10th, 2 more pages later, 2021, things student shared with me. I don't know if I can delete that. Here, let's try. Remove. It will be removed from view. No, I don't see it anymore. I didn't actually delete the file because they still have it as their file, but I don't need to look at it anymore. I don't need stuff that students shared with me last June. So one of the things that I plan on doing is going through, and you can do this in bulk. Do you guys know about holding down the shift key and then clicking on files? If you click on a file and then hold the shift key and click on a file at the bottom of a list, it will select all the ones in there, the whole list. And now I can remove all those. I don't want them anymore. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get around to doing this quicker. And I probably have hundreds, if not thousands, of shared files because students have been sharing files with me now for at least a year and a half, if not longer. And it's going to be boring to get rid of them all. But like I say, I don't use Google Drive a whole lot, and so I haven't bothered. But I'm gonna. Any questions about some of those little computer things? If you're sorting things out, if you're trying to move stuff into new folders and it was one that was shared with you, you won't be able to move it. You can't move stuff that doesn't belong to you. You can remove it. You can just say, I don't want to see that anymore because I don't care. But you can't move it to somewhere else in your drive because it isn't yours. It's just a link to something that somebody said, hey, you might want to look at this. I'll give you more as I come up with them, but there's a few to get you started. All right. We are going to do a quick little Algebra 2 books. Go. One per table pair, or one per group if you guys are in a group. Tell you what, Daniel and Peyton, why don't you just grab one book and come up and work together for this one, because this is a new exercise. And then Myra and Janice will work together. Yes, absolutely. Oh, underneath the calculus thing. Place it on the Algebra 2 book. Hurry. All right, everybody has access to an Algebra 2 book. Okay. Turn to, I don't have an Algebra 2 book. I'm going to borrow yours for a second. Turn to page 5. Chromebooks, put them away. We don't need them anymore. I think I might even have you working in bigger groups. For federally bigger groups. Okay. All right. On page 5. 5? Yes. You see 4 functions. Guys, remember function machines? I drop a number in the top, that's my input, and a number comes out the bottom, that's my output of that function. So if I drop a 1 in, it will calculate 1 minus 2 squared, put a negative in front of it, and drop out a -1. Okay? Here's the plan. They're not being noisy, but we are. When I say we, I have a loud voice. I own it. I'm okay with it. Guys, here's the goal. You're going to start with a number, 6. And you're going to drop it into the top of one of the functions. You don't know which one. You're going to have to figure that out. And you're going to get something out. And then what you get out gets dropped into the top of the next function. You take that number and you process it in this function, and you get a different number at the bottom. So you started with a 6. You get something out here. You drop the something into here, and you get a different something at the bottom of that. The goal is to put all 4 function machines in order so that when you drop a 6 in the top, you get an 11 out the bottom. You don't know what the order is. That's what you have to figure out. Now, one of the things that I want you to be thinking as you're working on this, because there are a lot of different possible combinations, but some combinations just won't make sense. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice that when you start to look at that combination, you'll be like, hang on a second, that doesn't make sense. So we don't have to do that one. This will involve a lot of really thinking about the question because of that. Okay? So I'm gonna put you into groups of 4, which is gonna be awkward because I don't have enough groups of 4, but I'm gonna make it happen. Here we go. You 4 are gonna work together, so you'll be able to just turn around and be working with them. Oh, and each group is going to get a set of the functions so that you can move them around and look at them physically, okay? So you guys are gonna work together, and there's your set of functions. You 4 are gonna work together. There's your set of functions. You 4 are gonna work together, so why don't the 2 of you move to that table right there, and then you guys will turn around and work with them. There's your functions. You 4 are gonna work together. There's your functions. Now, here's what I'm gonna do with you guys. I'm gonna split you up and make 2 groups of 3, because I don't want groups of 5. So I'm gonna have you work with them.
No, this is.
You.
Yeah. I definitely did not say it.
All right. There's your group of functions. So what you might want to do, why don't you guys turn around and she'll come back and sit here, and that way she won't be jammed in there. Yeah. You may. After her.
Yeah, it's okay. Figure out which
They said.
one.
It's on my roll.
So,
All right, so you're coming back here. You're coming back here. Everybody, you guys know what you're doing? All right, I want to hear lots of discussion. I want to hear conversation. I want to see you trying different things. Go. And it says right in A exactly what you're doing in case you didn't catch it from what I said. And you got the functions right there. If you want to take them out and spread them out, you can set the books and the Chromebooks and everything aside. Have lots of room to work. Maybe a good question for Casey would have been, why Casey? Instead of just, okay. Instead of just, okay. Explain to you why.
So, can that one?
Nope.
Let's turn the chair around. Easier to work with.
Well, this one's just page 1 of 4, so I'd say this is.
-6.
I think this can be either.
Okay, then we're gonna,
Okay.
I think that'd be too much. Really? Didn't show up. Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll try that. Because you know, I switch members on. I think I'm sorry. I never told my mother he could send half these slides down.
Yeah, I already tried that one.
You could make this like sweatbands, like, you know, how people used to wear those? You used to wear like sweatbands, you know, wrap around. You cut it out. What do you do?
This is.
Like someone can sweat. Like that much, you know, like. All right.
Next time.
So then.
Yeah.
DMX would turn into a positive, wouldn't it? Because DMX, this one's already negative. That one. This one.
Yeah, this one.
All I know is exactly where
Yeah, but we're gonna be able to round, or we looking for
exactly.
So that might be a problem. That might not be what we wanna do.
Or the second power, financing complex, where we use this too.
I don't know.
So let's say do the second power.
But I wasn't really talking to you at all. I'll do it. All from the
Just did two,
Now
seven,
you're not
right?
taking.
2, 4, 8, 16,
Now you're not
32,
taking.
64.
Me too.
So we have something
No,
on.
I got
Oh.
I've done 2,
Yeah.
4,
Well, I
I've
have.
2, 8, I've 2, 16, I've 2, 32, I've 2, 64.
Yeah.
So that should be.
Order them. Yeah.
So that's what you is 16.
Sure does.
Yeah, so now,
Yeah, you
no idea what you're talking about, Michelle.
Go.
What is this power of 6 of which you speak?
Tesla.
So 64
Yeah, be right here.
minus 7.
I do. Always. Wait, what is it?
Negative 76 squared.
There you go.
Right now. it's a
Well,
negative.
but that's only one function, right? Remember, you're gonna stack the function. So if you start with this and get 57, the next thing you're gonna do is drop 67 to one of those. So this would then be 57.
So how much else?
Yeah, the juice negative. Put in 6 and like.
You gotta figure it out all four.
How are you doing?
And the goal is to put them in order so the very last one and 11 drops out of the ball. So if you did this, you got 57 here. And then you would drop 57 into this, and your next one would be the square root of 57. And then you would have to take that and drop it into something else. Does that make sense? So what's square root of 57?
You went to cross country, right?
Nobody has a clue.
Why do people?
How
have
do
their shoes
people
on?
find out these things on a regular basis?
Like, I know you have yours on because I checked, but.
Oh, with a calculator, boom, you got a calculator.
Nasty.
Go, go, go.
Yeah,
Come on, everybody, put your
Go
mind.
step like that. Go
Hit
hit him. Yeah.
Good. Square root of 57, guys.
Did you get your what?
Sometimes we run without our shoes.
Does that sound like a
Really?
number we want to deal with? If
How do
our
you know
goal
that?
is to get 11? This probably is.
And I saw a girl running barefoot. I mean, I
Okay.
mean, with shoes on.
Now,
And then I saw, I said, Jennifer.
your second one is gonna, what's the square root of 6? So you're gonna start
Yeah,
there,
my
and
second
then
goal,
you can
I
drop
have a
that
picture of
into
it.
the
Someone runs into
You don't know
something.
what order these are gonna go. The goal is to figure it out.
And he's like wrapping the water.
All right?
Spare.
Continue.
We're laughing so hard.
Why?
Good.
Good. So f of x is not first.
I think we should start with this because it ends up with like 57 or something.
Okay? Why wouldn't you want to start with
I did.
this?
I don't know.
Go. Unless you're practicing a song about this
You
problem.
just scared me so bad.
Good, that's my goal. I like to sneak up and scare people. So how are we doing? 6 divided by 2 is 3 minus. There's not 6 divided by 2. It's minus of 6 divided by 2.
Oh, I didn't.
Negative.
Oh, I'm sorry. We actually just found out and then I just decided to do.
Okay.
For fun.
All right, continue. Let's hear discussions about this problem. Keep going. How are we doing? What have we tried? We taking notes of what we've tried?
There's no way to start with H.
How do we know if we tried something and then we never try it again? Because we forgot that we tried that one. We've tried so many things. Because you have to stack all of them. You can't just do one.
So cute.
Yeah, so we already knew that.
Wait, when did?
All right, I'll leave you to it. How we doing? Uh-oh. Here's a question for you. If one of your numbers is 2.449469743, do we even want to continue that number? We have to get to exactly 11, not sort of 11, not about 11. As soon as you see a decimal,
I don't know either.
so we want to do something different.
Oh, yeah. How could you not, Carter? I just got up.
Did you ever find out?
This one's gonna be at the top.
Oh, was it someone like one of friends or like somebody?
So let's do this, let's put them in order, in the order that you're talking about. And now, a little bit easier to sort of keep track of tonight.
What do you get from
Cheese. I've never had it that way. I don't want it. That's so, no, it's so hard to get out of this one. Try to do it all. It's so.
All right, there's the order they go. Write it down, justify it by showing your calculations in your notebook. Yeah, problem B is-
Try like, there's cheese in the heart. So many.
What are we thinking?
Well, so you just said cheese.
Jace was telling us something, what are you saying, Jace?
And the Grady House.
Okay, okay. So what can we do with the -4? Can we put -4 in here?
I believe it.
Square it, why? And then you need to focus a little bit more because, you know, you do it here. So Jason is saying, let's start with function A, because we don't know what order to do it in, right?
What?
No, because we're figuring out an order.
Okay.
I have no idea which goes first.
No.
Definitely 11.
Okay, I'm okay with that. So let's see what happens. So, Jace, I feel like we got two different things. You were setting off on, start with 6 using that one. But shall we figure out what happens with, with,
I want to do that, but I
starts with an M?
I got
The
it.
biggest.
Is mine right? Let's see what happens if we keep going with this. You put a 16 here, you got 57. You put your 57 in here, you got -3,525. Can we put -3,525 in here? Well, what does that symbol tell you? What's that symbol?
Two numbers.
Can you multiply two numbers together and get a negative? Remember, it's the same number, it's itself, right? So can you take the square root of negative? Because if we do that one, we get square root of a negative. But it could be this one. So let's put your -3,525 into here. And what happens when I divide 3,525 by 2?
All I know is this thing. And then I used to give her notes or something.
Is 0.5 going to be a problem?
I'm sure when you told me it.
If I take the square root of 0.5, am I going to get an 11 no matter what? If I take the square root of something with a decimal? So we probably don't want to put this in here because it makes it a really big number, makes it a negative.
Yeah.
So maybe we want that one to happen later. So how about trying something different? Keep going with this and try a different order of those. Have you tried that? That one? Okay. So let's take your 57. Let's try that. Make sense? What? Get better?
What?
Cool. Yes?
I think we have A.
You think you have it?
We check.
Okay, what did you do first?
Each letter.
So let's see. -16 divided by
Like, I don't
-8,
know.
negative becomes positive, -7.
Like, I would use it.
That was 128. -7 is 121.
Oh, this one not work because. That is so bad. Yeah.
But bigger numbers, but now you got more strategies, right?
What is this? It's in this thing.
Try it.
Yeah, let's get that one.
How we doing?
We're doing okay.
That would be funny if it was in
Not hearing anything. Come on, what are we doing?
Oh, you're not?
Sitting here staring at each other?
I'll check it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It works? Cool, let's check. Ready? We'll start with 6. 6 minus 2, 4. 4 squared? Negative 16. 16 divided by 2? 8. A negative and a negative? Positive 8 minus 1? 2 to the 7? Minus 7? 121? Let's not go crazy here. All right, B, bigger numbers, but now you got some strategies. Take a look at the book, there's a B. Now you got some strategies, it should go quicker. Go.
Yeah.
How we doing?
High five, that was so good. I'm so proud of you. We got that. You guys got two?
Okay.
You guys all know.
Wait, what?
It's definitely one of those really smart kids.
No, we have to get, start with 6.
You guys do it
and then
this
we'll
time?
11. So what do we do? We're trying to do it. Keep it in our heads. So we're going to 26 minus 2. 4 squared.
We have to solve it all over.
The negative in front of it? Negative 16. Good. Negative 16 divided by
There's no
2.
way it can start with H.
Negative 8 with a negative in front of it. Positive 8 minus 1.
But I don't want to.
2 to 7.
Yeah.
128 minus 7. 121. Hey, write it down. Like justification. Get started on B.
Wow.
You guys got both of them? Casey's busy. You guys got both of them done? Okay. Okay. You're gonna start with a square of something somewhere near 64. So that's you. First, you're trying to get into college. You're gonna get a really huge number. And then you're gonna divide your real number by 2. And then you're gonna take your not quite so really huge number and get rid of it. It means you have some pretty big number.
Feel people staring at you?
Come on, everybody should your hand here. Everybody should be helping. You helping? Good, glad to hear it.
I believe in you.
You got a second one?
Can I?
Okay, now. Wait, doesn't that have a square on it? Oh, but then you 2 to the power of 49. Well, not working. So you started with 57. Oh, careful. Is it really 16 or is it negative 2?
I thought it was exactly.
Because there's a negative out front of the square, right? So we gotta keep the negative there. So yeah, that good. Yeah, negative 16. So what's 2 to the negative 16?
57. That was the.
That good person.
I thought it was like.
Yeah, what's 2 to the negative 16? Great. Type it in. 2 caret negative 16.
Yeah.
Ugly decimal. Can't do that. All right. Nice work. I know you were struggling with it, but I appreciate it. Oh, yes, please. Hey, could I get each group, put your functions back in the folder? Blake, you listening? Put the folder right here. Homework keys, pass them to the left and forward. Aaliyah should end up with a big stack of homework keys. Go. Pens can stay on the desks. If you have put my pen into your backpack by accident, please get it back out. No, pens can stay on the desk. Left and forward. Aaliyah should end up with a pile right there, please. Books neatly back on the shelf. Homework keys, off to go, over the go. Red pens can stay right there. Should be 2 on each table. Thank you. And it's habit. It's like, look, pens, stuff on desk, go in a backpack. Then pretty soon all my pens are disappearing. It's like, I don't have any pens. You're bad. Where are you going?
Stay right here. Okay.
Oh, is that how it works? Have a great day, guys. Somebody, Gracie. Gracie.
Right now.
There's a chef down in the hallway. Hurry, hurry, I gotta get out and chef for Gracie.
Meet up at the Treasure Cafe. Need to head to
Gracie!
Good night.
Gracie, come back! I love being edited there. Thank you so much. Gracie, stop. Wow, I didn't get too far away. Okay. I love it. Who's reading this?
Did I leave my water bottle?
And your Chromebook,
I actually did.
right there.
Oh my goodness, it's because it's on the floor. Thank you.
I went out the hall and bellowed your name down the hall, but you were already too far away.
Thank you so much.
Let's see, I got this. All right.